You have seen this kind of person before. They do not yell. They do not fight for the last word. They do not turn the room into a storm. They just become quiet, and somehow that silence changes everything. It is not dramatic, but you can feel it right away. The air gets heavier. The distance shows up without a sound. And if you are that person, then you already know what most people never understand. That silence is not empty at all. It is full. It is crowded. It is intense. Today, we are going deep into why some deeply feeling people go quiet when they are hurt, and why that reaction gets misunderstood again and again. A lot of people think silence means coldness. They think it is a move, a tactic, a way to punish somebody. They assume it was chosen on purpose like a weapon. But that is usually not true. These people do not go quiet to control the moment. They go quiet because the moment is suddenly too much to hold in real time. And that difference matters more than most people realize. So if you have ever been told you are distant when you were actually overwhelmed, stay with me, because this may explain something you have felt your whole life, but never had the words to say. What looks calm on the outside is often chaos on the inside. What looks like withdrawal is often emotional overload trying not to spill everywhere. And once you really see that, the silence stops looking like rejection and starts looking like depth. When a deeply feeling person gets hurt, it rarely comes as one clean emotion. It is not just anger. It is not just sadness. It is not even one simple disappointment that can be named in a second and explained in a sentence. It arrives like a wave of many feelings at once. There is hurt, confusion, tension, disappointment, doubt, and a strange awareness of everything happening under the surface. They hear the words, but they also hear the tone. They notice the pause before the sentence. They feel the shift in energy. They catch the meaning behind the meaning. They start picking up what changed, what felt different, what suddenly seemed off, even if nobody else in the room would notice it. And that is where it becomes too much. Because now it is not only about what happened, it is about what was meant, what was hidden, what was felt, and why it landed so hard. Instead of reacting fast, they absorb it. They sit with it. They let it move through them before they speak. That is not weakness. That is how they process. They do not throw emotion back out the second it enters. They take it in, they examine it. They feel it fully, and that kind of inner work takes time. It takes stillness. It takes silence. So when people see distance, they often miss the truth completely. That distance is often emotional intensity being handled quietly. It is not that nothing is happening. It is that too much is happening all at once. And if that hits close to home, keep listening, because it gets even clearer from here. What happens next is even harder to explain. Their mind does not only register the event, it starts trying to understand the entire emotional map behind it. Not just what did you say, but what did you mean? Not just why did that hurt, but why did it feel different this time? Was there something underneath the words? Was there tension building earlier? Did I miss a sign? Did your voice change before I noticed it? Their brain starts connecting details most people would never even see. Now imagine trying to answer all of that while the moment is still unfolding, while your emotions are still rising, while another person is waiting and maybe demanding a quick response. It is almost impossible. So the system slows down. Speech is often the first thing to get affected. Thoughts are there, but they do not line up cleanly. Feelings are strong, but the language for them is not ready yet. That is why being told, just say what is wrong, can make them freeze even more. It is not because they are hiding something. It is not because they want to be difficult. It is because the answer is still forming. They know something hurt. They know something shifted. They know the moment did not feel right. But putting that into clear words takes time. They are not just reacting to the event. They are trying to understand it all the way through. That is why silence becomes the bridge between feeling and speaking. And if somebody interrupts that bridge, the words often fall apart before they can even be built. Most of these people were not born shutting down. They learned to do it. At some point, they probably tried the open way first. They said what they felt. They trusted somebody enough to be honest. They showed their real reaction, and it did not go well. Maybe they were called too sensitive. Maybe they were told they were overthinking, overreacting, or making a big issue out of nothing. Maybe their pain got brushed aside because it was inconvenient for someone else. And sometimes the worst part was not even being dismissed. Sometimes it was being understood in the moment and then having those same feelings used against them later. Their honesty became a weakness in someone else's hands. Their openness turned into regret. Moments like that teach a lesson very quietly. Not in one dramatic scene, but over time through repetition. So they adapt. They start filtering what they say. They think twice before opening up. They become more careful, more watchful, more private, until one day silence starts to feel safer than speaking. Not because they feel less, but because they have learned that saying everything does not always lead to safety. Feeling stays inside. Speaking makes it vulnerable. And once silence becomes the place where they can process without judgment, it becomes very hard to give that up. So, what others call shutting down is often a survival skill built over years. It is not always fear. Sometimes it is wisdom learned the hard way. And here's the part almost nobody sees. When they go quiet, their mind does not become empty. It gets louder, far louder. What looks still on the outside is intense movement on the inside. They replay every word, every pause, every small look, every change in tone, every second where the emotional energy shifted in a way that felt wrong. They do not only remember what happened, they remember how it felt the exact moment it changed. They keep turning it over in their head, asking the same hard questions from different angles. Did I read that right? Was that meant the way it sounded? Am I overthinking this, or am I finally seeing it clearly? Was it careless, or was it deeper than that? They try to separate fear from truth, assumption from reality, emotion from instinct. It is exhausting. It can go on for hours, sometimes days. Not because they enjoy suffering, not because they want to stay stuck, but because understanding matters to them more than speed. They would rather be accurate than quick. They would rather speak truth than react from confusion. While some people move on fast, laugh it off, or bury it, these people sit with the feeling until it makes sense. Their silence is not a blank space. It is analysis. Deep, nonstop, draining analysis. And the sad part is that others often judge the silence without realizing how much work is happening inside it. So if you have ever thought someone was doing nothing just because they were saying nothing, this is your reminder. Quiet does not mean empty. Sometimes quiet means the deepest processing in the room. There is another layer to this, and it surprises a lot of people. Sometimes they go quiet, not only to protect themselves, but to protect you. Because when they are hurt, their perception can become painfully sharp. They notice the pattern behind the moment. They see the tone under your words. They catch what you did not say but clearly felt. In that state, their clarity can become almost surgical. And if they spoke too soon, they might say exactly what they see before it has been softened by reflection. Not cruel lies, not random anger. The opposite. Raw truth, unfiltered truth. The kind that lands hard because it is precise. It exposes patterns. It points to what has really been happening. It names what everyone has been avoiding. And that kind of honesty spoken in pain can cut deep. So they stop themselves. They pause. They hold the words back. They step away from the fire before saying something that cannot be taken back. That is not avoidance. That is restraint. That is emotional responsibility. They are trying to make sure their pain does not become destruction. They are waiting for the truth to become thoughtful instead of explosive. They know words said in intensity can stay in a relationship long after the moment is over. So they choose silence first. They let the heat settle. They give themselves time to turn raw feeling into something clear and fair. And if you have ever mistaken that pause for indifference, you may have been missing one of the most careful forms of care there is. The problem is that most people do not understand this kind of silence at all. They rate it as rejection. They think if you are not talking, then you must be pulling away. In their mind, your quiet becomes a message about them. You are shutting me out. You do not care. You are being cold. And because they believe that story, they react to it. They start pushing. They ask for answers right now. They demand clarity before clarity even exists. They keep poking the wound because the silence makes them uncomfortable. But pressure usually does the exact opposite of what they want. It does not open the person up faster. It makes them retreat more. Not because they are stubborn, not because they want to punish anyone, because being rushed while still processing feels like being dismissed all over again. It feels like their inner experience does not matter, like someone else's comfort is more important than their emotional truth, and that feeling is familiar. It touches every old moment where they were not given space to feel what they felt. So they go deeper inside. They get quieter, more guarded, more distant. Not because they care less, but because they no longer feel safe enough to speak. That is the irony. The more someone demands speech from a hurt, deeply feeling person, the less likely they are to hear anything real. Pressure does not build connection there. Safety does. And until safety returns, silence usually stays. What they need in those moments is actually simple, but it is rare. They need space without feeling abandoned. They need patience without being rushed. They need quiet that does not feel tense or punishing, but steady and safe. They need to know you are still there without forcing them to produce words before those words are ready. Because timing matters. If they speak too early, the message may come out messy. It may not be true to what they really feel. It may be incomplete or too sharp or too tangled to help. So they wait, not to avoid the conversation, but to make it meaningful when it finally happens. They need someone who understands that silence is not the absence of emotion. It is the processing of emotion. It is the part where everything is happening beneath the surface before it becomes language. And when they feel safe enough in that space, something shifts. They soften. They do not disappear as deeply. They do not stay silent as long. Why? Because now they are not using silence as armor. Now, silence is simply part of their process, not a shelter from being misunderstood. The moment they sense that their quiet will not be judged, rushed, or twisted, they begin to come back on their own. That is what safety does. It removes the need for protection. And when protection is no longer needed, honesty comes forward much more naturally. That is when you finally hear what is real, not what was forced. If this is you, then hear this clearly. You are not cold. You are not dramatic. You are not broken. And you are not wrong for needing time when something hurts. You feel deeply. That is the truth. You do not just react to emotions. You experience them on many levels at once. You feel the words, the mood, the pause, the shift, the hidden tension, the meaning underneath the scene. Then you take time to understand all of it before you let it out. That is not failure. That is depth. In a world that rewards instant reactions, you are built for careful responses. You do not speak just to fill silence. You do not force a sentence just because someone else is uncomfortable waiting. You want your words to be real. You want them to be accurate. You want them to reflect what is true, not just what was intense in the hottest part of the moment. That takes discipline. It takes self-control. It takes strength most people never notice because it looks so quiet from the outside. But quiet strength is still strength. In fact, it is often stronger because it is not trying to prove itself. So stop telling yourself that your silence means something is wrong with you. Sometimes your silence is the most honest thing you have. It says, I care enough not to lie. I care enough not to react blindly. I care enough to wait until I know what I really mean. And that kind of honesty is rare. Still, there is a balance here that matters. Silence can protect you, but it should not become the only place you live. The goal is not to stay hidden forever. The goal is to feel safely enough understood that your truth can come out without fear. That takes the right people, not perfect people, just emotionally mature people. People who do not panic when you get quiet. People who do not make your process about their insecurity. People who can sit in a pause without trying to control it. Those are the people who make communication possible. They do not force your hand. They do not chase every quiet moment like it is an emergency. They stay present. They let the storm settle. They trust that if they make the space safe, you will come forward when you are ready. And the beautiful thing is, when you meet people like that, your silence changes. It stops feeling like defense and starts feeling like breathing room. You realize you do not have to protect every feeling as if it will be used against you. You begin to speak sooner, more calmly, more clearly, more naturally. Not because someone pressured you, but because someone respected your pace. That is what healthy connection can do. It does not break your silence. It makes your silence feel safe enough that words can return on their own. And if you have never had that, do not settle for less. Being understood is not too much to ask. It is the soil where honest relationships grow. And if you are the person on the other side of this, the one who loves someone who goes quiet when hurt, this part matters. Do not assume silence means they do not care. Do not read every pause as rejection. And please do not force meaning into the quiet just because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. Instead, stay steady. Let your presence say what pressure never can. A simple calm signal matters more than 10 urgent questions. Something like, I am here. Take your time. We can talk when you are ready. That kind of response changes everything. It tells them they do not have to defend their process. It tells them their emotions are allowed to exist before they are fully explained. It tells them they are safe enough to gather their thoughts without losing the relationship in the meantime. That safety is not small. It can heal years of being rushed, dismissed, or misunderstood. Because for someone who feels deeply, patience is not passive. It is love in action. And yes, there may be moments when their silence feels hard for you too. That is real. But if you meet their quiet with steadiness instead of pressure, you create the exact conditions where truth can return. Not borrowed words, not defensive words, real words. And those are always worth waiting for. So before you chase an answer, ask yourself something honest. Do I want fast comfort or do I want the truth? Because with deeply feeling people, you usually cannot have both at the same time. The truth is, silence like this is often misunderstood because our world is obsessed with quick reactions. Speak now, explain now, fix it now, respond before the moment moves on. But some of the deepest emotional processes do not work that way. They need space. They need quiet. They need time for the inside to catch up with the outside. That is not delay for the sake of delay. That is emotional accuracy. And emotional accuracy matters because what is said in pain can shape trust for years. A rushed answer may satisfy the moment, but it can miss the truth entirely. A thoughtful answer may take longer, but it has roots. It has weight. It can actually change something. That is why some people would rather pause than perform. They would rather be silent than careless. They would rather wait than speak words they do not fully stand behind. That may look unusual in a world full of noise, but it is not weakness. It is integrity. So the next time somebody goes quiet after being hurt, do not be too quick to label it. You may be witnessing someone working very hard not to turn pain into damage. You may be watching someone choose reflection over reaction. And in a time where everyone is pushed to react instantly, that kind of restraint is powerful. It deserves more respect than it gets. Stay with that idea for a second, because once you understand it, you start seeing quiet people in a completely different way. So, if you have been carrying shame about this part of yourself, let it go. Your silence does not make you less loving. It does not make you hard to love either. It simply means your emotional world is deep, detailed, and real enough that you cannot always translate it in one breath. You are not empty when you get quiet. You are listening inward. You are sorting truth from noise. You are making sure that when you finally speak, your words are not just loud feelings thrown into the room. They are considered, they are honest, they mean something, and the right people will not fear that. They will respect it. They will understand that your silence was never distance. It was depth. It was care. It was the pause before truth. And once they see that, they will stop trying to break your quiet and start learning how to be present inside it. That changes everything. Because when a deeply feeling person no longer has to protect themselves from being misunderstood, they open in a completely different way. More honest, more grounded, more natural, more real. And that kind of truth is rare. If this made you feel seen, hold on to it. If this explains someone you love, remember it the next time they go quiet. And if you needed these words today, that is not an accident. Sometimes the deepest things finally make sense the moment we are ready to hear them.